I'm John, I'm an alcoholic. I've been in the program now for 6 years, sober for 3.
This is scary. It's new. I never saw a body like that.
There's gonna be a lot of late nights and overtime because of the brutal murder that happened in town, and I didn't want to set up expectations that I can't keep.
Our expectations of you are very low.
Spans of the backs are gigantic, same as the distance of the paw prints.
It's a wolf. Or maybe it's a werewolf.
No, let me just make this perfectly clear. There is no such thing as werewolves. Our killer is a guy, and I'm gonna find him, and I'm gonna kill... And we're gonna bring him to justice.
We have every reason to believe that this monster will show up again tonight. I won't ask you to pray with me because of the goddamn lawyers.
Where were you? Where were you? John! None of you talk to me at once, okay? They're saying it's a wolf. No, it's a man. When do I get to be right about something? Do your job! Do your job! I am begging you!
You want to be sheriff? How about we start acting like one?
So first off, I know what you said, but give it up for Jim Cummings and his team. So Jim, like again, I wrote down like 20 questions, but I think the most important thing to talk about is you had written this script prior to doing Thunder Road.
Yeah.
And I've heard this story with other filmmakers, and then suddenly you finally got to do, like I heard that Rushmore had been written before Bottle Rocket.
That's right.
And so can you just talk about what that was like? And then I read in an interview you did that you were talking about how this was 10x it was of what Thunder Road. So just talking about going to that second film, this experience.
I wrote this before I actually even wrote the Thunder Road feature. And I was submitting it as like a web series to this company called New Form Digital that isn't around anymore. And they paid me to write the thing. And I was like, what I really want to do is to turn this into a feature. So if we get the budget to shoot it as a web series, I was only qualified to do shorts at the time. I'd done like a web series before. And so they kind of greenlit the writing of that. And then I was really dreaming of turning it into a feature. And then I wrote it as a feature, kind of combined it as a feature, and then went out with the script after we won South by Southwest. But it was still me being a junior screenwriter before I had done Thunder Road. So we got greenlit from Orion Pictures, MGM, and I was like, oh shit, now it has to be really good. Like, what am I going to do? I'm a ticking clock now. I can make this movie in 6 months. So I spent like 2 months after that pulling my hair out and learning everything that I could about screenwriting to try and make it a decent movie. And then by the time I landed in Utah, January 1st, we were good to go. We started shooting on March 3rd.
And the one interview I read that you did, and it really resonated with me, and I just wondered, is you were talking about going from Thunder Road to Wolf of Snow Hollow. You were doing everything, but now there was almost a political element. There was like a diplomatic element. You talked about
sucked.
Yeah, and if you can talk about that.
Yeah, you're taking notes from people who have never edited a YouTube video before, and you have to like be the ultimate diplomat. So instead of like being a good craftsman and like also a very nice person on set, practicing Buddhist, hardworking dude, Jackie Chan, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin kind of guy, you also have to be Barack Obama. And like if someone says, this needs to go into the movie, you have to go, I love it, let's do it. And then you know that it's going to make the movie worse. And there was a moment when I was editing the film, I did the first pass of it, and it was decent. And they were like, you need to make all of these notes. And I said, you're going to have to hire another editor. And they said, we don't have the budget for it. And I said, if you're going to make me do these terrible additions, you have to hire another editor, because I'm going to walk out in the parking lot and slam my hand on a car door, and I'm not going to be able to do those changes. And they hired 2 more editors.
So Again, so many questions, but the one that I also want to ask is, it's really touching to see Robert Forster, and it's so funny because watching the character he plays here, I was thinking about the character he also plays in Twin Peaks: The Return, which he must have done just prior to coming onto your show. And I guess the question is, what was at that point, was Robert Forster one of the biggest actors you'd worked with in one of your own films?
For sure.
And so what was that like?
He was by far the biggest actor, and everybody wanted to hang out with him on set. He was like everybody's grandfather, kind of like the mascot of the movie. Obviously, it shows he's like the most charismatic, hilarious dude ever, and we just started filming, and that's what he gave us. But yeah, no, he's super famous. Jackie Brown is one of my favorite movies. He's fucking awesome in that. It's like so endearing. It's a love story. So I was really intimidated, and we sent him the script like 3 weeks before we started shooting, and I didn't think that he would do it. I thought we were going to have to find someone who's a non-actor who kind of could be my dad. I was thinking maybe we get my dad at that point. He's 3 weeks out from shooting. He's 84, it worked. He said, yeah, I'll do it. He called his manager, and he said, hey, I want to do this movie, Wolf of Snow Hollow. And his manager said, Bob, it's a werewolf picture. And he goes, I don't care about that shit. I care about the stuff in between. And he shows up on set, and he knew that he was dying and didn't tell anybody. And so the stuff that he dug that was in between was all of that stuff of like not being able to tell anybody you're dying and trying to be a tough guy and like be in this case it was his heart, but he died of cancer. But the whole time he was like the most hard-going, knew everybody's lines better than they did, and was just down to do it 1,000 times until we got it perfect. He had directed a movie, it was a detective movie in the 90s, early 90s, where he was a writer, actor, and director. And he was like, I'll never do it again. But because of that, he had such appreciation for me and was like, anything you want to do, let me know. And he was great.
That's incredible. So then this will be my final question. I'll go out to you guys. The other interesting thing to me that I would put to you is, now you had written this prior to doing Thunder Road. The way that we see it and we perceive it, and so you take it wherever you want, is you do Thunder Road, which is a very character-based, in the real world, I don't want to call it slice of life, but it's the real thing. And now you're gonna challenge yourself with a new genre. That's how it feels as an audience. Is like, now you're gonna go to the next level. You're gonna do a murder procedural, a werewolf movie, and yet you're also bringing your own voice that we recognize from Thunder Road. I don't know if that was your experience, but what did you think about going to a new genre?
Oh, it was terrifying. And also, it's a space that I'm a guest in. Like, I'm not a horror guy. So nobody knew me as a horror guy. So it was a weird thing. I bet Jordan Peele had to go through the same thing, going from comedy and drama to then doing something that's serious, that has a very opinionated audience, horror movies. And so I was a huge fan of horror movies growing up, but it was a difficult sell. I had to go to the studio and say, it's going to be just like Thunder Road, but with a werewolf. And they were like, we love it, kids. But that was really the only way that I was able to do it, was to keep it funny and heartbreaking while also doing all the fun David Fincher and Dario Argento stuff.
I have questions, but I want to go to you guys. So let me, yes, right here.
I feel like with this, like what you were just saying, like with this type of genre, watching like David Fincher stuff, and you mentioned Bong Joon-ho, like I watched Memories of Murder for the first time recently. Like a lot of these type of movies, I feel like require you to set a mood, and I think you do that with the opening credits, with the big like montage of the mountains and everything, and a lot of those shots of the moon and everything. Like, can you talk about that a little bit, and like how important that was for you and planning it and pre-production, or did a lot of that come in editing?
All of that was in the edit. Like, really, we had no. The way that we were making this movie cost $2 million. So it's 10 times the budget of Thunder Road. And so what happens with that is you have to have at least 50 people on set to excuse that budget. At no point could I grab the camera and be like, we're just going to get this quick insert. Or we got to get this drone footage. Like, the ski slope is open, get this thing. And so much of it was discovering that in post to just give the audience a breather and to make them understand how vast this landscape is, how hard it would be to find someone who's a serial killer in the snow. And I don't know, I like all that stuff, like Swedish detective stories and serial murder. I had to do all this research about that. And so much of John Douglas's writing, the guy who wrote Mindhunter, is about how it affects the families. It's more personal crime rather than this political crime. And you have to do that. You have to show off the entire neighborhood. And I don't know, it just felt kind of poignant about the subject, but then also the audience needs that to kind of get out of all of the very specific stuff with character.
Yes, miss. I'll go with the woman and both of you. So 1, 2.
Let's do it at the same time.
Yeah. But behind you first, and then you.
Well, why did you cast yourself? Like, is it just out of ease because you wrote it and you're like, this is just the easiest?
With this movie, the studio was going to greenlight it only if it was going to be me. So, like, because Thunder Road was so popular, it was like, yeah, unless it's Jake Gyllenhaal, it should be you. And I don't know Jake Gyllenhaal, so it was like a much harder thing to get somebody who is a better actor than I am. And so really, I cast myself just because it's easier. It's like much less expensive. I don't take a check for the acting that I do, or the editing, or a lot of the stuff writing. And so it's just much faster on set. All of the movie is based around one person's biology, and I have 24-hour access to the lead actor. So, like, when I'm planning that long 360 shot at the second crime scene, and it's me, like, doing all the physics of shouting at the news and all that stuff, I can practice that for 3 weeks beforehand, and I can't ensure that an actor is going to do that. So really, out of necessity and budget, it's been me.
And then miss in front.
Yeah, my question was actually sort of related. It was, if you had to cast somebody else in the roles that you've played in your films, who would you choose? Like, no constraints.
Michael Shannon. Or Jackie Chan. Who would I cast? Jack Lemmon. Jack Lemmon would be great.
They all three, or would you pick someone
I
different?
guess, yeah, you do it enough, and then you're like, oh, no, wait, that's me. I am all three of them. I'm pretending to be all three of those. Gyllenhaal's pretty good. That guy, Johnny Flynn in Emma, is such a babe. I would love to work with him. Yeah, next question, sorry.
Yes, right there.
So, because this is like a mystery whodunit sort of story, on the second watch through, it's a lot easier to pick up the context clues and like the taxidermy book and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're writing it, do you ever feel like, oh, I don't want to give away too much, or is there sort of a
Constantly. I'm a huge fan of Mindhunter, and then the studio is not a fan of Mindhunter. The studio is like, people are watching this on their phone on the bus. You have to give it to them. And so actually that taxidermy book thing and a couple of the other like interviews, the second set of interviews were Paul Carnery, who's actually just Will Madden, my buddy Danny's younger brother. He's also the guy who works in the court in Thunder Road. Anyway, he's a buddy, and he's 2 years younger than me, which is crazy. But no, there's so many times where I wanted to have it be as subtle as possible, and then everybody else was like, nobody's going to get it. I'm glad that we did it. I'm glad, because even now people are like, there's not enough clues, and looking at it again, I'm like, oh no, it's definitely that guy. Anyway.
But a quick follow-up on that. So like in the process of writing, like how aware are you of, oh, this is just something I think is cool versus I'm making this for this audience and I care about them?
I think about the audience almost exclusively. I've been a Redditor for like 13 years, and I feel like that has changed my metronome of what the public objectively and democratically think are, funny or frightening or wholesome. And having that be kind of a dip test has reset my brain so that I can kind of accurately advise how long to hold on an awkward pause.
If I can follow up on that, because there are some social media platforms I'm on all the time. Reddit is one I've never been on. So when you say Redditor, what does that mean?
Yeah, so Reddit is, welcome to my TED Talk.
And forgive me, yeah.
Reddit is...
I know of it.
It's called the front page of the internet. It is the third most trafficked website in the United States. Facebook is number 4, which is crazy to think about if you haven't been on Reddit. Reddit is an accumulation of a bunch of different subreddits. So let's say one of them is funny, one of them is horror, one of them is awe, which is just like cute pictures of bunnies and cats and stuff. But really, they function as different lobes of the brain, of like different specific subjects. Obviously, there's like gardening and woodworking and things like that, but they're communities of people that then democratically upvote and downvote what they think is cool or culturally or socially significant. And it gets to the front page, which is Reddit, which is just all of the different subreddits and the things that make up for it. It's unbelievable. It's really cool. It's very scary sometimes, but then it's a great way to get an understanding of what people anonymously and democratically think is cool.
So like Group Brain, or there's that great story about it. If you interview 1,000 people about the weight of a cow, if you actually took the average of what the 1,000 people say, you'll almost get exactly the weight of the cow.
Wow.
Yeah, they've done studies of this. It's nuts. Like, people will be all over the place, but the average will be exactly the weight of the cow.
Wow, that's wild.
It is. Yes, right here in the middle.
The werewolf costume is phenomenal. I'm curious what that process was like.
It is so janky in real life. It is not phenomenal. There's so many times you have to hide a person in front and then the werewolf behind, so it doesn't look like a guy in a dog costume. Like, that was something we were fighting at like 0 degree temperatures at 4 a.m. It was like, just look good, please, just look good. Sorry, continue. I interrupted you.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, what was it like on set and like prior to shooting, and like what was your mindset? And I guess you can kind of answer it. Like, were you like, this is a phenomenal like design, or I'm not sure if this is gonna work?
I read both. So we had like 3 weeks to build the costume, which is a crazy ask. This guy Michael in Atwater Village is a costume designer, wardrobe designer, and instead of going to one of the pro shops, we went with him. I'm glad that we did. My friend Lauren Wilde, who's also a makeup artist, built the head, and he built this like kind of lycra outfit that had the real hair coming off of it, or synthetic hair coming off of it. But the reason I loved Michael, and the reason that I loved doing this first before we did anything else, was I had to convince the studio that we had to cast Will, who plays the bad guy in it, because it was going to take 2 months to build the outfit. It has to be built to a human's body. It's kind of a lie, but I told that to the studio, and they're like, yeah, that's fine, Will can be the bad guy. And I was like, oh my god, one of my good friends gets to be in this movie with me. And he's so good in it. And so that was a good little workaround. But really, most of it is just trying to get the thing to look right and not look like a stupid Party City outfit.
And so just to follow up on that, because just from a filmmaking point of view, I was watching it, and when you see it, I'm like, no, that's real. That's not. There's no CGI there.
Yeah.
And then, so was it a mix of editing and sound design and just the right moments?
Yeah. There's 2 moments of VFX in it. One of them, it's all in the same shot. It's the wide shot when Hannah's getting murdered after her arm comes off, and then it's Will standing up to his full height, and we had to do fake breath coming out of his mouth because he was breathing out of like the neck of the werewolf outfit, and to make it seem much more realistic, we did that. And then we did this kind of funny, on a werewolf and a wolf, the knee bends backwards. It's 2 joints for the ankle. And so because of that, we had to kind of jerry-rig that on set and then green screen it out and to make it look like it was real.
Okay. But the
rest is all real.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of Jaws, watching it, because like Spielberg and Verna Fields talked about how if you saw the footage of Jaws, the shark mostly looked awful.
They called it flaws.
Yeah.
Everybody was like, this movie's not going to work. Yeah.
And then, so, kudos. Let's see, yes, right here and then right there. Yeah, you first.
Just between this and Thunder Road, I'm curious about your fascination with law enforcement. Yeah. And what's that born out of?
The first time, so it's difficult to get your second movie greenlit, and so like it kind of had to be the next project because it was about sheriff's department, kind of like police department. It was like, basically, a lot of the executives don't want to get fired, and if they're like, okay, this script is kind of closest to what he had done before very successfully, let's give him the money to do this thing. So that's one of the reasons why I made this one and not my paparazzi thriller, because it was just easier to get done. And then with the police department in Thunder Road, I had done a short film, and I was originally going to do it as a Marine, but then I met these 2 cops in a pizzeria in North Hollywood, and they said that if you're going to a funeral, you have to wear your uniform, apparently. It suggested that you wear a uniform culturally. I don't know why. And I was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And now I'm like, immediately grew out my mustache that night. I was like, I have to be a cop. I have to humiliate the police. It's like going to be the great dictator. I'm going to be like Charlie Chaplin doing this thing. And so then it was already kind of baked in that I was going to be a cop. And then I went down to Austin with Zach and did a bunch of ride-alongs with real cops and found out how fucking terrifying that job is. And then it was just cops, and then I became a cop guy. And then David Gordon Green sees Thunder Road on an airplane, and was like, "We're casting for a cop dude in Halloween Kills," and I was like, "Oh no!" And now I'm part of the Haddonfield Police Department.
And then yes,
you do a lot of good work with off-camera jokes, and it's especially in this movie it gets really elevated, and like the eye lines with the tall people and everything. Mostly, I guess, with Thunder Road, was that something that you planned, like, going into it, or was that kind of discovered either on set or in the edit?
Like off-screen ADR, or like?
No, like the Ricky in this movie, you constantly reference Ricky, but we never see him. There's a lot of jokes in the opening of Thunder Road. hear some off-camera.
Yeah, in Thunder Road, there's the guy. I slept in my car. And he goes, "You remember that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I brought you breakfast." I go, "Thank you so much for doing that. Well, fuck you right now." That was actually a flub, and that's the voice of Danny, who's Will's older brother. But during that first monologue, there was a line where I was supposed to say, "You brought me breakfast." And I wasn't going to have anybody talk to me that whole monologue, and then I fucked it up and forgot that line, and so we had Danny come in and say that, and it's so much better.
And then behind, yes. Yes.
Based on what you said about the edit and then having to bring in 2 other editors because you didn't want to make the changes they did at the studio line, are you happy with the final edit? Was this your choice? And if the studio doesn't own any perpetuity, is there a chance the director's got it?
Probably not. They own it. They own kind of everything. But no, I love the movie. Like now, I was talking to David Gordon Green about this. He said that he had to get rid of editors for his movie because I was working with this guy, Brett, my buddy, Brett Thomas, and he worked on a bunch of projects with me before. He's just like a friend and an editor. He's very talented. And so I was like, let's get Brett to come in and do this thing. And then we were fighting the studio notes constantly because we were both trying to make the movie that was the screenplay that we really dug, and like the podcast version of the screenplay that we really dug. But we only agreed with each other at a moment, and the movie wasn't getting any better. And it got to a point where I was even like, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to keep trying to do this thing. The studio doesn't want that. It's their movie. We should let them do it. And this studio stooge, Patrick Barnes, came in. No, he's actually a buddy too. I hired him. He came in, and I was like, so this is what I'm thinking for the opening. And he goes, I don't give a shit what you think. And he's like, I'm going to watch every frame of the footage, and you're going to come back in a week, and I'm going to show you what I have. And the movie was better. And I just had to get over myself. And that became what you see now. And I'm very, very happy that they ignored me.
And I saw Chuck.
Oh, yeah. You said earlier that you had never intended on acting, and I'm curious if you have the same issue that a lot of us have. Whenever we see ourselves or hear ourselves, we're overly critical, and it feels cringeworthy. And I'm thinking that when you're doing these films, you must get really sick of yourself, seeing and hearing yourself, or
you don't know me,
or you don't have. That's what I was going to ask is. Are you able to get past that? And if so, how do you do it? Or is it you're just thinking about the job?
Thank you for the question. It's the job. It's like you have so many other things that are happening on set of like, we only have this location for 2 hours. I've just got to do the thing and purposely humiliate myself in front of everybody. And that's kind of the point. It's very freeing as well. The reason I feel that way is because I made a movie called No Flood Wall here in 2009, right after graduating from school, and I didn't act in it. I played a very small part. And the amount of performance enhancement I had to do in the edit, I just kept on thinking, I should have just done it. And I didn't want people to think I was a megalomaniac. And the movie stunk. The movie is just a really boring movie. I went to the New Orleans Film Festival, was kind enough to program it. But I spent like 2 hours after the movie, and like people in the theater, like my parents, like the movie is not great. And I just sat looking at this like overturned shopping cart in a canal, and I was like, I'm never going to make a boring movie ever again. And I committed to it. And I was like, whatever it takes, I'm going to do it. I've never taken an acting class. I don't know how to be a good actor, but I just did it. And like that kind of thing of making something small and having success in the small stuff, people let you know what you do well and what you suck at, especially on the internet. And that's very helpful when you listen to those voices.
You said something that I just read this today in researching this, and I never thought about this, and I just want to know if you want to talk about it, about how you had this insight that scares are like jokes, that they have to have punchlines. And I was like, I wish that was a thought that came to me, but I was like, that is such an elucidating way to think of horror, which is that the good scare is the punchline to a joke, to a setup. I'm just wondering if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so I've realized that kind of all genres of movies are based on setup and payoff, like even a Western, where like, I think when you're doing something that is comedic, it's very obvious that you have this sleight of hand setup that then becomes this unexpected but inevitable punchline that's funny. Same thing goes with horror. The best horror movie is like Sixth Sense, where it's like unexpected but then inevitable ending that is obvious once you see it from far. And so it functions a lot like humor. It's no wonder that Jordan Peele has gone into horror, because once you get really good at comedy and understand the neuroscience and the psychology of where an audience is going to be on the roller coaster, it becomes far more exciting not just to hit people with horror, but also romance and like drama, like to win an audience over with sadness on accident that's unexpected is the same kind of thing. It's unexpected, and then something big happens, or somebody says something that is perfect and it makes you cry. All of that is kind of chemistry or alchemy that you do with the human brain.
And I also wanted to ask you this is one question. It sort of goes with the acting, but hopefully this will make sense. I'll try to ask it real quickly. I have found that sometimes you encounter directors who want to talk about actors as if they're props. Or they'll be like, I'm just really frustrated, but they're a necessary evil. And when I hear that, I was an actor in theater when I was a kid. And I've always said, and Orson Welles said this, that the actors are the soul of the film. They're actually underrated. You get a lot of people talking about it. And so my question to you is that because you're the director, but you're also acting, is there any sort of insight you could give to filmmakers who aren't going to act about the importance of acting or about how you should think about your actors and your performers?
That's tricky for me. I think that there is a really right way to tell a joke and a 1,000 really bad ones. David Fincher has a much larger of an asshole line than I do. He says there are 2 great ways to shoot a scene, and one of them is wrong. It's very David. But I think really it's true. And when you give freedom to actors sometimes to do whatever they want, it'd be the equivalent of giving a member of the choir complete freedom to sing however they want. And it's the whole thing has to be cohesive. And that's why I do everything as a podcast beforehand, where I play every part. We don't always have time to rehearse. We have no money and no schedule to be able to rehearse. So I'll play all the parts, and I'll put in the music and the sound design, and I send it to every member of cast and crew beforehand, so at least they get to hear the song before we have to perform it live. And then when we're on set sometimes, and they're not doing it right, I kind of have to walk over to the piano and be like, no, this is the key that we're doing. And that's basically all directing is for me. And then it's so forensic the way that you make a movie. Anybody that's on a film set that's any good, the person has to be exactly in the right place at the right time and be looking at exactly the right spot in order to make this cut work. So really all of the actors that I work with are completely get it. It's like this forensic style comedy, drama, horror, and you have to be in line with it. So I hate to say it, there's a great joke of W.C. Fields. When movies started to come out when there was sound, somebody came up to him and said, there's going to be sound, there's going to be talkies soon. Finally, we're going to be able to hear the actors talk. He said, who wants to hear actors talk?
I'm going to follow up on what you said there, and then we'll take 2 or 3 more questions, and we'll do a 15-minute intermission. We haven't gotten to this, but I have a friend who's a writer, and he wanted me to tell you, he's a screenwriter, and he just said, thank Jim for his beautiful oneers. And we haven't yet talked about your incredible oneers. But then there's an excitement with a great oneer because you realize it's a oneer, but you're into it and it's telling a story. So what are your thoughts on oneers?
It's so important to hypnotize the audience. Every moment matters, every second matters. If someone's not going to be in frame for a minute, you're going from one character to another, you have to have something be moving in the background in that same direction. The audience is you're going to lose them otherwise. Every frame matters in a oneer. And also, to be able to play with the framing of it, to be able to have the character in the foreground be the main character, and then to be focused in the background shows the audience that you're crafting the movie, that they're in good hands, and that's so important. Children of Men is one of my favorite movies of all time, and there are 2 really incredible oneers in that movie, and I saw that 1,000 times in theaters in 2007 when it came out, and I was like, maybe you could do this with comedy as well. I think this could function in the same way. And then when you see Memories of Murder, there's a big 360 Steadicam crime scene shot. I hadn't seen the movie until after I made this one, but I was like, all right, cool. Sometimes you plagiarize on accident.
So we've got 2 more questions. I want to get people who haven't. Yes, back there.
Yep. First, here's the best part: Halloween Kills.
Oh.
Never mind. You find the dog.
Yeah.
Secondly, so I've seen all 3 of these. There seems to be a continuous addiction or substance abuse. Is that just is that a personal thing, or is that just another thing to root against for the hero? It's adding to the story of he's in the bottom, we're trying to build him back up, and it's just another thing to add on.
I think for this one, it's just a stress machine. This movie was the most stressful movie I've ever had to make. I was losing my mind making this thing because it was so stressful. It's $2 million. It has to be really good in order for people to make that money back. Otherwise, my career is over, which we did tenfold. Anyway, very lucky. But with alcohol and alcoholism, for this one, my brother's an alcoholic, and so I asked him a lot of stuff. I was like, is it weird for him to drink Listerine? I stole that from Stephen King. He once like relapsed at a Thanksgiving drinking Listerine, and he goes, yeah, no, that's reasonable. It's actually 17.4% alcohol. And he had just known that statistic because of how often it happens. So like 1,000 little things I did research on to make sure that it was good. And then with Thunder Road, it was a bit more like saving the cat. Of like, you see the guy in the opening montage where he's trying to make his life better, his daughter's life better, and he buys the like nicotine gum, and then later you see him smoking. It's a bit like, oh, how he's fallen, this poor guy. So another little like kind of setup and payoff effective thing for the audience. I'm also 5 months sober.
We'll go one more. Yes.
I might be reading into the end of this movie a little bit, but I was just curious. When John's daughter looks in the dresser, she like stares at something. Can you say what she stares at?
Yeah, it's a gun. It's her grandfather's gun. The only clue for that, sorry, it's not obvious, and I stole that shot from The Social Network of Eric Albright looking in the hallway. But she looks at the condoms and then stops laughing and then looks down the hall, and then we see me fixing my belt and tightening it. And the only time you see me mess with my belt is when I took my dad's gun out of the morgue bag and then put the gun in the back of my pants. And so it's like a very, very small, subtle detective innuendo.
And I want to ask the final question. I'm going to be selfish, and we're going to take the intermission. So forgive me. One of the things I love about great horror, in my opinion, is when it's really horror, but the subtext of what's happening with the human beings feeds into the horror. So the notion of there's this monster, but then your character is dealing also with being violent and monstrous. And I'm just wondering if you would, like, writing that and developing it, what your thoughts were on how the personal trauma, like I think David Lynch does this brilliantly, but the personal trauma mirrors the actual horror that we're seeing, and they comment on each other.
Right. That's like the line in adaptation, the Spike Jonze movie, where he's like, and the detective is like also dealing with these problems that the killer is dealing with. And it's like that's so interesting. It's like, no, that's so commonplace. But my favorite stuff is that stuff. It's fun to like set the serial killer down with the detective who's chasing him, and then the serial killer is just like, yeah, my ex-wife, she couldn't hack it, and then he goes, yeah, I've been there. And it's like this kind of funny thing where the audience knows that they both have similarities and they're getting along despite the fact that one of them is about to get shot in the face.